I'm Chris Bussing. Welcome to my channel. It's committed to helping more people create lives of freedom and impact through success in tech sales and the pursuit of self-development. And by the way, it's brought to you by Tech Sales Accelerator. Start your tech sales career in the next 12 weeks. Guys, what a treat today to interview one of my good friends, Chandler Gull. This guy didn't just break into tech sales, but he broke into tech sales at a great startup and has been in the startup world killing it. And he started out as an account executive. And so many of y'all are asking me, can I start as an AE? And usually I say start as an SDR, but Chandler cracked the code. So in this conversation, we're going to talk about Chandler's journey, breaking into tech sales as an account executive, his experience selling in the startup world. And also we're going to talk about his nonprofit that he's running, because this guy's a huge vision. I think he's going to get you fired up about how you can use tech sales as a path to empowering your entrepreneurial dreams. So make sure to give the like button a love tap, as I usually say, because the YouTube algorithm loves that, and we'll show this video to more people who could benefit from the message. And with that, let's dive into it. Chandler, I know you're a busy guy. You got some meetings after this, so let's go right into the meat and potatoes. Where were you before tech sales, and then what drew you to the tech sales path?
Two main things, Chris, and really thank you for having me. You and I have been friends for a while, and I love what you've done to build this community, to bring people to the awareness of what, a path in sales, specifically in technology, can do for them. So kudos to you, man. I'm glad to be here. Let's dive into it. Two things, I think. Number one, it's something that not a lot of people actually know about me. But if I go way back, really 10 years ago, before I even considered going to a college or university, I actually went to a professional psychologist, and it was more a career-oriented psychologist, and went through and, crunched all the numbers, filled out more forms and questionnaires than you can picture and imagine. And the end thesis of all that was that Chandler Gull should be in sales.
Wow.
So that's kind of where the inception came from, actually.
So Chandler, quick thing, that's a great insight for the audience to consider doing some self-assessments, to develop your self-awareness, to make sure that you're going down the right path, whether that's sales or somewhere else. So I had to double click that. That's a great insight, but keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was recommended to me by somebody who, wasn't even going into like a sales path or anything in particular. I would totally recommend it for anybody who is maybe like in their teenage years or in high school to seek some kind of, advisement, and do some kind of analysis based upon like your personality, what you like, because, truly who people are, for the most part, you want to find something that fits the mold of what you like to do, that you're going to enjoy more than anything. I think I didn't know it as much then as I did today, Chris. It was kind of like, I wasn't exactly sure. That's made sense to me at that point in time. But today makes more sense than I can imagine, that, I needed to be in sales, in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, I'd recommend it. I mean, I think it was like $200, and I was probably, 17 years old, and I did that. But super cool. And then, I think second thing, in, how I got into tech sales and really just getting into the space was, especially kind of going into, so I'll take a step back a little bit more into my story. I've always been super entrepreneurial. I started a couple businesses, and, they were just kind of side projects, hustles, right? And this was like, as I was like a freshman in college, and those failed, those didn't work out. They were short-lived. But I was always looking for something, right, to like, create and be entrepreneurial. But ultimately, went to college, went to a 4-year university, studied entrepreneurship and business administration management. So I got a well-rounded degree, but actually didn't study sales in university, which is why I love what you do so much, because, there's not as many universities or colleges that might have the specialty. You have to learn sales by doing, or through accelerated learning, through like courses like what you do, through coaching, mentorship, are incredible ways to learn and actually get into sales. So I took a conventional route in terms of 4-year degree, but not in terms of sales. In my first full-time job that I really had outside of school, I went straight into sales, and I went into staffing, and I hated it. It was not, for me. And the lesson I learned there, not at that point in time, but where I am today, is there's so many different types of sales, right? There's different industries, there's different selling methods and styles. Even within tech, there's cyber, there's SaaS. You could go sell payment processing with hardware. You could be out in the field. You could be completely remote. You could be hybrid.
And there's the best space where you're at, AI, man, which we'll talk about later as a teaser.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So, I went to that and I didn't like it, right? End of the story. I didn't like that style of selling. And so what happened there, I didn't really like it, but it was my, I'd been to a 4-year university, right? Needed to get a job, right? I had that job full time, and then COVID happened essentially, around that time. And I think 70% of all jobs in the US were basically furloughed or laid off. I was furloughed. If anybody might not even know what that means.
What's that mean? I actually don't even know what that means myself. I've heard it. Yeah,
I mean, furloughed essentially was, there's no end of employment officially, but for the time and spell now, we're temporarily having a separation. And then there was also companies that, of the 20-30% that kept their roles during that time, had maybe 30, 50, or 70% wage cuts during COVID too. So yeah, very interesting time,
they were like Chandler college, right? Oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to throw in a joke. I'm forcing it, but I'm like, Chandler's so great, we can't officially let him go. We got to keep him, for at least furloughed. But anyways, yeah.
I appreciate that. But yeah, and then so ultimately that happened, and then coming out of that, I found an operations role in which was hiring. So I ended up going into the automotive space. Worked for a large logistics and leasing company, which I worked for them for a year and a month before I left to get back into sales. And honestly, after about 6-8 months at that company, it was called Penske Automotive Group, which is a public company.
Yep.
They have tons of different divisions. I basically oversaw a fleet of about 200 trucks and trailers, like large tractor trailers and moving vehicles, like moving trucks, and basically managed the operations of that with a couple other what we called, management operations people. And at that role, I wanted to get in sales. They try to segue you into a different path. You can either stay in ops, or they had this role that was basically did sales for the entire district. So you worked with company owners to help facilitate, fleet transactions, essentially do lease deals. End of the day, it was sales. And while I was, working in ops, I was still doing sales. Like, it was just more front desk, working directly with customers. But I would actually still pick up the phone. And while I was in ops in that district, I became number one in the state of Florida. I wasn't in a sales role, but I was number one in the state of Florida for revenue brought to the company. And that was just because I loved working with business owners, right? But I wanted to get in sales, and a position just never seemed to, pop up. There was only one for that district, and ultimately started, applying and putting out feelers. And I wanted to work remote. I realized that. I had friends like you. I had friends that were in cyber. I had friends, in tech sales, friends that worked remote. And I was like, I could see like, the remote sales life is a wave, right? And that's where I, ultimately want to be, to have more flexibility for myself, and also have greater, earning potential, right? A better flexible schedule, things like that. So basically, applied and got accepted to a few positions during the application process, and ended up choosing to go work for a really large corporation called Grubhub, which most people know as a food delivery service.
Yeah.
And again, after 6 or 7 months, wasn't really a fit for me. It was a very fast-paced selling environment. And Grubhub as a company, there was a lot of growth and picked up pace. This was kind of, this was a few years ago. This is after COVID. But ultimately just didn't feel at home with what I was doing. I was working remote. I liked it better than what I was doing before. But I needed another switch of pace and switch of gears. So I went back to the drawing board, and, while I was an account executive essentially there, I wanted to, find something I was a little bit more passionate about, I guess, from a, subject matter. So I found a different company, combined my nonprofit background experience, which maybe we'll touch upon later, and I went into selling basically CRM software for nonprofits, which I did really like and enjoy, and actually felt more passion towards that community as well. And it was actually during that round of applications coming out of Grubhub where I met the founders at Mapsot, which is where I am today. And they were in a very early stage, very early day. I would have joined their team immediately at that point in time, but while they had put the feelers out for hiring, it was such an early stage. It really wasn't an optimal time. So I accepted a different position, basically my second choice. I had like 6 or 7 offers, good market rate, good commission structure, everything. And, went to another company again, about 7 months. And then founders of Mapsot came back and said, we want you to come join our team. We're building something very special here. And we want you to join. We liked you last time, but we weren't quite ready to bring you on. And the rest is kind of history. That's where I've been at today for now 2 years, is working, very close to the founding level, essentially at Mapsot. And you can kind of see that pace is, you go from, I think you did it as well, which is you go from very large corporation and kind of shrink down to smaller organizations in time. And inversely, sometimes you increase your earning potential in that direction too. So, I love it. I love the startup world. I love the startup pace. I want to be able to be more impactful in different ways rather than just siloed to like task of a certain role. And this definitely gives me the opportunity to do that.
So Mapsot was your number one choice, but they weren't ready yet. It was a little premature, but they liked you and wanted to stay in touch. Then you went to sell a CRM in the meantime to nonprofits. And a good insight there is you have a nonprofit that you're building and you're passionate about nonprofits. So you were energized and excited about the cause. But then Mapsot opened up, basically, is what you're saying. And you were able to join this super exciting cutting edge AI firm. And tell us about what is very exciting about this specific company, Mapsot, and maybe like a little bit about what problem are you guys solving?
Yeah, absolutely. So one, AI, AI is very exciting. Not only is AI, it's a trending, there's trending keywords, Chris, right? AI is like a hot subject, hot topic, and really became more popular when ChatGPT was released in the beginning of 2023, right? It brought a lot of mass attention, but broadly, a lot of companies have just invested heavily in AI. That's where companies are investing the absolute most right now. And it's for many things. One is it's truly for efficiency, I would say, number one, and for scalability, right? AI solves very large, complex problems and moves really quickly. AI, essentially AI manpower doesn't have, a battery, right? It can run at all moments in time, right? So you can leverage it whenever you need. We sit in the, AI powered software space, which is a sector within a larger software sector or a larger AI bucket, you could say, an AI powered software. And the problem we're solving for companies is allowing them to scale faster using data, particularly businesses, emerging brands, franchise businesses with physical retail presence. So I like to say like a stake in the physical world in which they have. This could be companies that, as large as a McDonald's to as small as, a 4 or 5 location coffee chain that has big plans to grow into different markets and expand to 20, 30 locations, right? And so we solve that. There's a very complex process, I would say, that goes into what's called real estate site selection, which is the science surrounding the data science surrounding like where do you open up a new physical business, and it's very complex. So we use AI to simplify that process and basically bring to the decision makers or the investors or the board, the founders and the CEOs are typically investing millions of dollars into one location for their business. You've got very expensive rising construction costs. You've got very long zoning processes to just get approved for a location. So they've got a lot of risk. So we help them mitigate and gain confidence in those decisions using our machine learning models.
Where can I sign up? That was really well
You sign up
articulated.
today, man. I think I gave you a demo a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it was a good one, man. I love it. Very crisp. That is executive communication in action, distilling, the core problems that you solve, and who you solve it for. Okay, so what's it like being in this role? Because this is like an AE role on steroids. Like, you were the founding AE, and technically when I look at your LinkedIn, you're a founding member of the go-to-market team. So I know you wear many hats. So paint a picture of what you're actually doing, what all your responsibilities are.
Yeah, that's it. It's a long list, Chris. I don't think AE is a really correct portrait of the role that I sit in. But when you are at the founding level, you wear many hats, which is basically what you just mentioned. But my core focus all in is on growth. You've got stages of building a SaaS company, and the first major stage is all focused on growth. That's new meetings, new business, new relationships, all these things that you're familiar with. Mostly based upon getting new relationships, increasing exposure of the brand recognition in the marketplace. So I do marketing, I do sales, full cycle. I also manage accounts and customer success. We have a team that handles technical support, but I'm very involved in that process. But I like to think of myself as the relationships person, which is someplace that I really enjoy being. It's very cool, the people I've gotten to meet in the last couple of years. These are founders of large private equity firms. They might own 5 200 location companies. These are massive conglomerates, and those are the individuals that I get to meet and work with, really just on the relationship side. So I've always enjoyed the part of getting to know a company and individuals and their goals, and really just meeting them where they're at. So from a sales perspective, very deep discovery calls, right, which have high conversions to actual deals that you do. I get to basically sift through the big picture objectives and strategy for a company and paint a picture of where we can fit in to help them get to their goals. And the goals may be going from being 50 location company to in 10 years have 1,000 locations and be the next Jersey Mike's Subs, or one of these companies that gets acquired by Blackstone or BlackRock. I think that's a pretty cool place to be.
So now you've got some friends in some pretty high places running private equity firms, founders of companies. Isn't that a great benefit of this path, man?
That's the best, especially in my space. I mean, I'm sitting in a very, very unique space that not many people that had the vision to be a seller was. I would add this too, Chris, which helped kind of open my horizons and realize what was I looking for, and how did I see Mapside in a place that probably 99% of sellers would have not seen, in an opportunity to work for a company, because it is risky, right? It's risky to some regards. A lot of people would give the advice to, you go work for Oracle, you go work for the largest companies as an AE, and you have a stable time and probably a lot easier way selling. But it was, I think you interviewed him at one point or no, Chris Orlob, and he was joined Gong at 200K ARR. That's kind of the needle in a haystack, golden tickets that you can find and if you're the first one there, I noticed that you get the chance and opportunity. It's like a blue ocean for your own sales path. I mean, being at Grubhub is you get a little slice, you get a little territory, you get whatever, and you're trying not to step on toes. It's very competitive internally, right? You don't have the chance to explore and expand, whereas being at the beginning of a company, it's the world is kind of your oyster. And that's where the opportunity is if you do get with the right company in the early stage, right? There's talks. I mean, I think and not every company is going to be a unicorn. Not every company is going to be one of the largest public companies that exist. But employees 40 and 50 at Meta are worth tens of millions of dollars in equity and stock options packages. So that's another thing that's always, beneficial too, is you have an opportunity to not just trade your time for money if you can at a company. Like you really do want to make it worth your while if you can find the right opportunity. Um, you know.
Yeah, you do remind me of Chris Orlob, both blonde-haired
Oh,
entrepreneurial
sure.
beasts.
Yeah, I got
And
this
so,
ad came through the other day.
yeah, man. So you have a vision that transcends tech sales. We'll get to that later, but within the MapSot journey, where could this thing go? There's no promise of IPO, but I want to know. I'm a poet, and I didn't even know it. That rhymed. No. So what were the stages of growth that are possible for you looking forward?
Absolutely. So IPO is, I've always had a dream of helping to take a company public. And you know, it can go different ways, Chris. I can't tell you too much, but an IPO at some point in time in my life, and I say whether it be with MapSet or another venture, is something that I do have the desire to do. To achieve that objective. I think the venture capital realm is very promising. I think there's been some changes, kind of in the last few years. It's been very interesting, just money velocity overall. You had a huge boom, and you have some overvaluation of public companies, and you had insane multiples for AI companies that 90% of them failed, in 2022 and 2023. But ultimately, I think that would definitely be a dream. But never know where something will take you. But yeah, I'd like to ring the bell at some point.
Yeah, and maybe it's your own company or the CEO of. So what happens for the audience when they IPO? What happens to that equity?
We'll see. Big payouts typically for equity holders. A lot of IPOs, if you notice, when companies, I'll take Coinbase for example, like you have a major sell-offs because a lot of the private capital that came in and all these different funding rounds, pre-seed, seed, series A, B, C. I think you've worked for a company that's series D, right? You have all these different funding rounds. You have private equity, you have angel investors. You have a lot of those, big money that likes to take profits when an IPO comes. And then you have, the mass market of individuals who invest in public equities, which come in. So when a company IPOs, sometimes basically what I'm saying is you might see a decline in price and then it rises again. Look at Coinbase, for example. But yeah, I mean, usually IPOs are pretty big payouts to all stakeholders pre-IPO.
Great insight, man, because it's not guaranteed that you make bank on an IPO, but there is a chance.
It's never guaranteed, right? And
it's cool that you have that opportunity to make exponential wealth in a moment that obviously was years of work to get there. Because obviously you can get a nice base salary, you can get some nice commission where you work harder, produce more, and you have a big upside, and reps make so much in commission. But to throw in the equity, especially to start up and have the shot at that outsized gain with the IPO is cool. And I definitely see you ringing the bell one day. I'll be like, let's go, Chandler, you did it. And we'll look back on this video.
I appreciate that. And if that ever happens, we definitely will. Chris, I think it's cool. And it's, I know a lot of people think that remote opportunities are newer, but there's been sellers, Chris, that have been selling software. I mean, software is not new, right? You could have been selling, Hewlett Packard software 30 years ago and doing really well. Sellers have been making millions of dollars from their house, for decades, right? So sales is just a huge opportunity, mostly dependent on the vehicle and really just if you're in the right place, right? Right company, right vehicle, right style of selling. I think you and I probably both share in some regards, we appreciate a very consultative, relationship-based selling approach. I can never sell insurance, Chris. I would be terrible at it, but where I, maybe bad at selling something, I could be good at selling something else just because of, my perspective, how I view things, how I operate. I think people appreciate authenticity more than anything. And you can't really BS someone who's the founder of a company and he's been doing it for 30 years. Like, you just have to be the real deal. And not just any person who's selling, software can do that. You do really have to be real.
I remember when I had Dan Pink on this thing, on the podcast, and he's a beast. And he said, B2B tech sales is management consulting. And that's what you're doing, man. You talk about aligning with a company or a PE firm and looking at their vision and connecting your solution to empower that vision. And like, obviously, a very good business acumen. It's clear in the way in which you are speaking and what you're sharing with us, even in this conversation. So there's a lot of pride in that, man. And I agree with you. It's like solution selling, consultative selling, and building great relationships is where it's at. Anything else you want to add on to riff off that? Otherwise, I want to take us into your tips to capture this opportunity. But any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think my only other thing is like basically bandwagoning off what you just said is, selling large scale solutions, which are, it is, like you said, management consulting maybe broadly is an okay way to, describe it. At the end of the day, it may be, enterprise level, business to business SaaS software, software as a service, right? Large, high ticket deals, right? It's the dream of a seller, I think. And I know you've had some amazing guests on, but, like Jamal Rimmer, brings.
Yeah. And that's thanks to you, dude. You're the one who pointed me to him. So I appreciate that.
Well, because he's got great stuff, man. But, guys like that, really paint a picture of the dream is doing $1 million deals, right? And that's where you can really be in the upper echelon of selling. You can sell things that are worth, like what can you sell and really make it scale if you're selling something that's, super low ticket. Because, part of like that consulting side is like you also sell part of yourself in it, right? You're selling like, I can add whatever value that someone believes that I have on a deal, especially if I'm involved in their account. Like I'm their primary point of contact. I don't throw them to the wolves of a team in the back end to deal with them. I stay involved and collaborate with them on the vision that we agreed upon, right? And that's how you can articulate, much larger figures into deals. I've definitely noticed, it's how you start to get from, deals in the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. And then what Jamal talks about, like those 7-figure type deals, which can emerge, which often take, those, I haven't got one, but I'm confident that I'll get there.
You were saying, though, just to interrupt you, is that didn't you close a nice 6-figure deal recently? And to put in perspective, man, I just think that's a lot harder than closing a multi-million-dollar deal for a big tech company where it's just, like it's so established. Like to close, didn't you close a nice 6-figure deal?
Yeah. And I think it should have been a larger deal. It can be a larger deal than that. A lot of it is about the value that you can paint. And that's kind of what I told you, like a very relationship and consulting type selling, which is focused on solutions, solving big problems that you can paint $1 to. It's not a set price. Like I go to the grocery store and I want to buy eggs. Eggs are very expensive right now, bad example. But it's fixed typically, right? There's not much variance, right? But I could talk to you today and then I could talk to somebody else in your position, tomorrow. And depending on how badly Chris needs something, I can create a solution that might be so valuable you're willing to pay top dollar for it, right? So we can customize solutions and customize pricing with a solutions-based selling approach rather than just something that's more off the shelf like you get at the grocery store.
So Chandler, you painted a good picture of this opportunity. By the way, I noticed I'm using a painting metaphor a lot today, but my mom's a portrait painter, so what can I say? Okay. Dude, let's talk about breaking in. I'm going to keep it high level, and you can take this where you may. What were some of the key factors that helped you land a great job? Like if you had to look at the whole job hunt, what specific aspects would you focus on to stand out and like get in the door and then do well in interviews?
Yeah. For me, this is just for me. So, may work for some people. Some people might hear this and think that would really work for me. I would say two things, but like one is I built and created enough real world experience by being entrepreneurial and actually starting a business, which, a lot of companies exist for 30, 40 years. I know people that have like started a business. You don't understand that like a business might not be profitable or even make money for 2, 3 years or maybe more, right? Some CEO out there right now is 8 years into his venture. He might absolutely have a breakthrough year and, be $1 million in profit, but he might be not profitable for 8 years, on a venture. So I just understood, and was able to, start companies like Mind Power, right, and carry certain experience that I think made me unique. Anytime I was ever in an interview, I didn't really have, any problems like getting an offer, for the most part. And a lot of it is just being able to like have real conversation. Like an interview, I think, it can be whatever you want it to be, right? Like an interview could be that boring legacy. You walk into an office, they ask you boring, bland questions, or you can help drive the interview yourself. And like, it could be just as much what you're looking for and what you want as someone interviewing. And I think just that's kind of always been my stance in interview processes. And I think people always liked kind of the entrepreneurial side. It always stood out, both on a resume, and then it was always something that was talked about like in an interview. And I think that, I think that helped rather than like relying on, just a degree on paper. I really built my own experience because, if you're 23 and you get out of college, you don't have any experience. So how do you separate yourself? Like you have to create experiences. And I created my own experiences.
How powerful. Like you had, I'm sure, all these stories and could speak the language of business outcomes, as I describe it, when you're delivering more revenue than anyone else at Penske in an ops role. Like that's so transferable. And so you really kind of took charge of your interviews. Like, what did that look like, taking control of the conversation?
I think it depends, right? Like, who are you interviewing with, right? Are you interviewing with like someone who's a manager, or like you interviewing with somebody who you can really connect with, who's like closer to the founder or upper leadership level that like thinks differently? I think a lot of it, Chris, is really just a lot of it's like natural kind of like personality and just getting along with people that I, can naturally connect with. Like I could be in a room full of people and, not really fit in, depending on the, environment. Like I could be at a bar, with a bunch of people and it's not my crowd, but I could be in a room networking and like this extroverted side of me just like comes alive. I'm like 90% introverted, but when I'm around the right people, I just like light up because I just love business. I love entrepreneurship, and they get to feel that energy. And I think that feeling, that emotion is probably what they, felt and what they liked in any interviews, if that makes sense at all, right? Like I remember like I was hired by a person who oversaw a district in Penske, which is like basically a business owner of 1,000 trucks at that level. And you're basically managing like 100 people, different sectors, different departments. Like that person's an entrepreneur. Like they think differently, and they like me, and that's who hired me. So I think it depends on, it depends a lot on their personality, kind of like who you're interviewing. And then the one other thing I would add too, just kind of on, getting experience. How do you get that? Where do you get the experience from? Or do you be kind of like me and I build my own experience, which is great. Could be like you. I think you're a good example too, is like anyone could be working on building some form of like a personal brand or have a project or something that inspires them, something that makes them a builder or a creator, right? And not creator in the sense of like social media, but like creator in the sense that like you have something that's yours, right? And I think any type of that experience will always stand out in some kind of interview, something that you have that you call yours. Chris can go to any company today and have a way better chance and shot because Chris has a brand and Chris has just so much experience. And it's not all about maybe the Oracle experience, right? But that all that stuff together, plus what you're building and do here, I mean, who wouldn't want to hire someone like that, right? You have an audience, you have a network, you understand sales better than most people. Like, who wouldn't want something like that?
Man, means a lot to hear, brother. You're someone I have a ton of respect for, because it's like you're younger than me, and the things I hear that you've achieved, like building your nonprofit, closing these 6-figure deals at a startup that you've built from the ground up from a sales perspective, marketing perspective, your other entrepreneurial hustles, and your vision, dude, it's incredible. And, for the audience's perspective, and this, but like one of my mentors who's founded 3 companies, and he was in tech sales and just crazy entrepreneur, just totally set in life, is like, keep Chandler close. That guy is going places. So it's just fun to have this conversation and get a look into your mind, your heart, and your experience. And I noticed that what you said was that essentially they felt your emotion. And that was very wise to say that they felt that in interviews, because sales is emotional. And when you're interviewing, it's like a sales process. And the way you connect with people that are going to buy from you or hire you is on an emotional level. And they saw your passion, didn't they? Like you said, you're passionate about business. So it seems like that, like you probably had that twinkle in your eye in your interviews.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all what is it, the highest level of, highest energetic frequency is authenticity. And if you have that, right, or if you can channel that, then you can get most of what you're looking for or what you want, I think, most times, right?
Yeah.
It's it's any type of, when you exhibit, fear or uncertainty, and it goes into like, just think about being in a perspective trying to like sell someone. Like, they're going to feel the slightest hint of lack of confidence in you, right? Like, I've done deals where, I've done 12-month long sales cycle deals. Like, that's a lot of energy over 12 months to create a conversion, right? And that's just constant pouring of energy into somebody, just reiterating your confidence in what you can do for them consistently. That takes a lot. Like, that takes a lot of energy. And most people like, okay, sorry, you don't, okay, bye. And they just give up, right? And you usually don't get what you want out of something the first time, right? Nobody has success overnight. So, I think the lesson there is probably insane levels of like patience. And I think that's led to, a lot of success too. And going back to it, really just being authentic, or like finding ways to display your interests or passions in an authentic way that people can feel, they can see, they can understand, right? And some of it's, some of it has to be like natural talent. Like, you can't memorize, like if we're talking an interview, you can't just like memorize stuff. I'm a wing it type of guy. I'd rather walk into a room and give a speech off the cuff, because it's going to be more authentic than scripted. And that's just how I've always kind of, been. And I think I've always kind of performed, better, that way, with, less stress and like long hours of like, preparation and things like that. And really just going into it with a quick review and a plan of action, and then, kind of attack it, and just avoid, I think a lot of people going into an interview probably, like maybe you remember like your first interview, like your first company you got hired, like how much time did you spend researching the company, trying to understand like who's interviewing you, like all this stuff to like prepare, like what am I going to talk about myself and all this stuff. Like, I think there can be a lot of that, but at the end of the day, you just have to be, authentic and confident.
Such a good insight for interviewing. Trust your gut. Like, do some preparation. You need to do some preparation, collect some relevant stories and things, have an idea of questions that might come. And make an effort to understand your interviewer, their background, and maybe you get a little insight into their hot buttons. But at the end of the day, I like that you just show up authentically. I think you even said wing it. That's powerful, man. And I've actually even, like, let's say 5 years ago when I was going for a sales role, I didn't get it because I over prepared, and I actually limited myself because I got so caught up on saying the right things and it came across as a little more robotic, man. And I got more anxious, and I noticed, like, I'll never forget in my final round for Google Cloud when they flew me out to Austin, put me in the Four Seasons. It was epic. And I was preparing and preparing. And then even up to that final night in the hotel. And then I got sick. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even think. It was like brain fog. I felt horrible. I'm like, I'm going to fail all this work to get here. But the craziest thing, dude, was that was the best thing that could have happened. Cause then I said, excuse my French, but I was like, fuck it. Let's just do it live. And it is what it is. And it led me to be more present. And obviously I'd prepared to a certain point and I was able to, it just forced me to trust in the process. And it sounds like you get that intuitively, man. So that, I think that's an important point for the audience to get.
I love that story, Chris. That's real, man. Thanks for
Yeah, it's crazy, dude.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's awesome. But yeah, no, authenticity is everything. And I know you've got some other kind of things that you wanted to talk, so I want to make sure you have the ability to ask those questions, and we can talk about some other things that you think your audience might find of valuable. But I did just have one thing to ask that has always been present for for me. In being at it, obviously if it's your company, if it's someone else's, like wherever someone's at, right? You have to really be bought into the vision. I know that there's a lot of people that I know there's a whole kind of job hopping culture that exists, which is 2 years is an optimal time, and then you jump to you kind of sidestep to a new position, new company, new job. You take higher pay, like you get wage increases, like you're always more valuable when you're not as easily, available, kind of floating. But I think if you can also like find a company, like you're going to be able to do better if you absolutely believe 100% in what you're doing and you have the best product in the market, and you can't fake that. So like in terms of being at any company, like you have to believe in the value. Like I remember going back to like a story from Grubhub, like they gave us $50 a week, which I thought was awesome, to order food. Like it was like it was just an incentive, right? And they want you to experience, right? Like you work for the company, you might as well use the service too. So they gave a $50 a week credit, and every week, everyone in the company would just, order through the app and stuff. I never had a single good experience ordering online. Like it was, delivery was messed up, orders are messed up. Like, just, you get what I'm saying, right? Like, and I know that everyone's probably had a bad food delivery service, but like, imagine trying to like sell the value of something and just not believing it. So when, and it goes back to being authentic. Like, how can you be your most authentic version of yourself if you're in that type of position, right? So you really have to find a vehicle and be, with or building a company, like you believe 100% in what you're doing, that it matters, that it does impact people in a positive way. I think that's kind of mission critical to be, successful. And if anybody that would ever listen to this is ever, considered or been in that position, it's worthwhile to find a different home or create a new home for yourself, right? Depending on what stage of the game you're at. I mean, Chris, you could be a consultant and run your own firm for the rest of your life starting tomorrow, right? Or you could choose to be an enterprise seller and do really well with whichever company you want to, right? And you put yourself in a position to have the ability to do that through, years. Somebody might be listening to this. They might be just starting out, right? They might not have that privilege built up over time because time's not been on their side. But you do want to be at a place that is a proper match, right? If you can, right? And if you're at a place and it just has been, bogging you down, because I've been there in a couple different sales roles, or that type of selling is not right for you, culture fit's not, like, find a new place, go back to the market and try to find a better company.
So glad you called that out. Way to take control of the conversation and share an insight that we all needed to hear, that I needed to be reminded of, and that I really validate and resonate with. You got to be rowing in the right boat and selling something you believe in. And when you find that type of place, you can then last 3+ years or more. And there's such power in having staying power, getting a promotion from SDR to AE and then having a couple good AE years under your belt. That's what I did at Oracle. And then Google Cloud recruited me, and it gave me more leverage, rather than just trying to jump right away. Like some people at Oracle, left so early, like in under a year of being an SDR. And some of them were just bopping around as SDRs at the same level, you know? And some jumped to other companies prematurely. So I think there's wisdom in what you said of finding the right boat to row in and like being consistent. And eventually you get to the point that I really believe you're at too, is where you can actually consult if you want, which is cool. And that's the cool thing about this path. And imagine, dude, you like, whether you take Maps Public or another company or regardless, the experience you're developing, man, you're going to be able to take that to other startups, bro. I can totally see you like consulting, like, or maybe you're a CRO with like different startups and you just take them public or grow them, dude. Yeah. Like you could crush that.
Yeah, no, it's called the fractional game, and like the fractional CROs are popping up everywhere, right? Go to market specialists, right? I mean, I think it's one of the most in demand things right now for any company, especially in an early stage, right? You need to build proper strategy. You need to have the right sales enablement set up, and you need to build the right teams. There's so much. There's so many companies out there right now today, Chris, that have a lot of potential but don't execute, right? And it's just sad. So yeah, like talking about the consulting thing. I mean, anybody who wants to get in the consulting game, like, great, find a client, get in the consulting game, right? And you can definitely have success. I think, especially I know you did an interview with Jared, who's the founder of Rev Genius, and just
thanks to you, dude.
Yeah, and like just
so
like
grateful.
Go to market communities are literally the best, right? But like having proper go to market experience, like that's so in demand right now. Like how many seed funded startups are out there, right? That need people to fill in gaps of knowledge, skills, experience, time. And anybody listening to this could certainly go tap into any type of their network base and find someone, to work with. If you did want to work, at a startup, for example, like there's plenty out there to find, to work with.
So I've only got a couple more questions, man, because I know you're a busy guy and this conversation has gone above and beyond. I'm loving it, man. And I'm going to rewatch the game tape. I promise you that. So you identify this company you're excited about. How do you get interviews? Because I feel like the way you did it was pretty cool, but what's the move?
I mean, Chris, I've always had success, sending a super authentic message to the founder, or a job recruiter, but like always to someone at the very top. I think something I realized a long time ago, which has served me very well, is like, you think that someone who's like super busy schedule, like entrepreneur, founder, multi-millionaire or more, won't have time or make time for you or have any interest in anything that you had to say. But if you can tailor like a message correctly, I've had plenty of people who respond, in time. I've met and I've got mentors that have been relationships developed over time, over sending messages to them on like LinkedIn, for example, and they're like, I get probably 30, 40, 50 of these a day, and I don't respond to a single one, but I responded to yours. And so if you can figure that out, I have no special like secret sauce of how to talk. Maybe it's just something natural that has to like come from the heart to stand out, but like send that top person a LinkedIn message, right? Connect with them and send them a message that's real. And if it's something that has potential or is interesting to them, they'll probably respond, and they'll give you their time, which is oftentimes surprising. But that's what I've done. I mean, that's what I've done my whole life to kind of stand out. And it could be, LinkedIn's one example, but like if you're out, depending where you live and stuff like that, like go out there, just like be social, like meet people. You can go to networking events. I've met really cool people, like there's always that, like you see a celebrity or something like that, or someone famous, they like wouldn't give you the time of day. I was at a restaurant in Miami one time, a pizza place, and I was like, that dude's a pro football player. And I just like walked up to him and started talking to him. He told me to sit down at the table, and we talked for 15 minutes. And he's like, most people would just walk out the door, but I respect the fact that you came up here and talked to me, right? And wow. So that's another lesson. I mean, I've had that experience, and I think I've just carried that kind of throughout my career, I guess.
Take initiative, whether it's at the pizza shop, putting yourself out there, or on LinkedIn. Now, you send authentic messages, and there's got to be some special sauce in there. I bet, here, my question is, are you acknowledging something specific about their business that you respect for them? Like, wow, like that, I'm so impressed. Are you framing anything about yourself and why you'd be a good fit? Like, I just want a little bit of the special sauce.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, I think the special sauce, if anything, is, do your research, right? Like if you were to be, I got dozens of them today, right? I get like messages on LinkedIn, I get emails, I get things like that, right? And obviously something at some point in time has to catch my eye, but do your research and show that you've put in some preliminary effort. That's how you can open up doors with the real players. Because it shows that like I've sent one-line messages, like one-line email message to a billionaire, and it showed that I did, research, and
wow,
that he's working on is like 99% of public knowledge and things like that, or 90% of people just like wouldn't know that, or maybe it all has to be about them, right? It has to appeal to them in some way. It doesn't matter about me, right? It's like, show that you have interest in something that's really, really important or interesting, or something they're working on, that would stand out, right? Or what is it that's mutual, right? I got in a lot of doors because of mind power, right? There was a lot of synergy there, right? There's always going to be, it's a lot easier to have interest when there's synergy, right? When there's something that you've done or, worked on. But yeah, I'd say like research is literally it. And I know we've got some friends. I was on a call with him a couple weeks ago. I know you've got a friend, Zach, like he's built his own AI powered software that helps do that kind of, in-depth research. It's a new emergence of sales, which is hyper customized outreach, right? And I think that's exactly the game, right? If you have to do it manually, then do it, manually, right?
Yeah, so good, man. So to wrap up the conversation, I wanted to talk about your vision and the future. And there's different aspects to it, but one key thing we need to talk about is mind power. And I'm on the board, and I need to get back to you on something, but dude, it's an amazing organization. So tell the audience, like, what is Mind Power? What's it about?
Yeah, so Mind Power is a mental health not-for-profit which serves the student athlete population. I'm a former student athlete. Always was an athlete, and sports were my life for many years. It was it was always athletics and academics, right? And that was all encompassing and just consuming my life. And at some point in time and stage, that came to an end. And interestingly, in 2018, 2019, I had some experiences, and I met some people, and I basically saw what. This is pre-COVID. This is people talked about depression and anxiety, mental health challenges, right? This was before all of that, right? There wasn't as many kind of social awareness campaigns or anything like that. So we sought to build and create one. And essentially, in terms of like specifically serving and supporting, student athletes, we were one of the first couple foundations to really exist. And we, ended up going viral a few different times. And just creating a community and a safe place, which met our first kind of, pillar objective for the foundation, which was raising awareness. Now, 5 years later, for example, now there's a lot more awareness. There's a lot less stigma, which we were fighting against a stigma, which was, a cultural, generational stigma surrounding, how do you go about mental health challenges? Like, how do you approach those? And it was just always very negative, always very dark. And it's very uplifting now. It's very positive, right? And it's very, we've broke down the barriers of conversation, surrounding that, which has been beautiful to see. But that was our first objective, is try to break down those, create community, create safe space, let people know that they're heard, they have a community, they're never alone. And so it was very positive. And then the next and kind of future stage, something that we've been working on, is really, building the masterclass of mental health online, not self-help is the wrong word for it, but like educational content, right? Like I sat through, if you've heard of masterclass, right? It's a subscription, right? You have courses from industry professionals and stuff like that. It's like a digital library where someone can have, ideally, we're going to want to have hundreds of thousands of users have access to get, cutting edge information from, if you were to sit through 10, sessions with a sports psychologist, what does that look like? You can watch that in a video form and get just one-on-one coaching through a library online. That's kind of our long-term vision to build. And, currently working on gaining some more, grant funding, through different states, foundations, and governments to be able to pour more and build that out, in time. And then, in the interim, we built a lot of strategic partnerships with companies like BetterHelp, which basically anybody who is in the Mind Power community, snap of the fingers, you get 1 month of free therapy online, which a lot of people were able to utilize. And we hope that it helped, a lot of people get access to therapy that they needed, at the time. So yeah, we're building a lot of cool things, Chris. You're a good friend and you are on the board of Mind Power, and I really appreciate you, being involved in that mission. I know it's very important to you as well. So, I definitely appreciate you for that.
Yeah, I really appreciate the privilege of being able to contribute to the mission, and I just admire you for taking a stand for student athletes, for mental health. And honestly, is it like, you're a former athlete, but does it expand like beyond like student athletes, basically? Or like, where do you see it?
Yeah, I think students are and have been the most kind of vulnerable population ultimately altogether, but there's an entire space of retired athletes, right?
Yeah.
That also needs community, needs services, solutions, support, and so we hope to expand upon that in time. But to our core, it's always been about the student athlete. But I definitely see more direct collaboration in time with athletes at the professional level and beyond.
Yeah.
And you can see it. I mean, I was looking today, and Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins said, I just can't do it anymore. And a lot of those athletes, they do go to sports psychologists, right? Like, even in your elite state, you still have challenges. So I just want to address that and make it public that no matter what stage someone's at, right? There's always challenges that may come up, and it's really how you approach dealing with them and what type of resources you have available to support you through. You're always going to have the upper echelon, the great times, right? Be at the top of your game, but you're going to be at times that are, more difficult than others, and everyone deserves to have proper resources, during those times, right?
Absolutely. So I've got 3 more questions, but they're quick ones. I have to ask, how do you balance go to market like founder at a startup that is just dynamic and probably keeping you so busy with building and sustaining Mind Power? Like, how do you do it all?
Great question. I think, the surface level question, Chris, or the surface level answer is, like time management, right? But like, it goes far beyond that. I actually think being an athlete helped me a lot with that skill set, which is, how many games have I played in my life of sports where the clock is winding, down 5, 4, 3, and you have to hit a game winning shot, or, you have to come up with these plays on the fly. Like, I lived that life for, basically 2 decades, or so as an athlete. And I think that just helps me just get stuff done. I think I'm amazed by people's potential to stack so many things within a finite amount of hours per day and per week. I wish I had it, but there's a principle for that. Maybe you could help me fill in the gap, but there's a principle for that, Chris, which basically is, you'll figure a way to get the stuff done if you had an hour available or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
I know what you're talking about. Like, if you give yourself less time, you're going to be forced to get it done. So that's homework for the audience to look that up.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's it.
Dude, I love it. And so 2 more questions. So your broader vision, even beyond Mind Power, right? Because you are, I see you being you might be a billionaire one day. I mean, gosh, you got big things ahead. But so what are you going to be building over the years to come?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I want to do, some angel investments and get into acquisitions a little bit. There's a huge wave of retiring business owners, right? And they're looking for the right people to take over and support their business endeavor. So that's definitely on the horizon for me. That's a primary focus objective. And then just a variety of different investing. I mean, I think everyone needs to take control over their most powerful wealth building engine, which is their income. And then when you have an income system that can be scaled and grow, and you're smart about your money, you can save and invest your way to, my example is, if someone could basically work a W-2 job for 40 years, any type of W-2 job, and invest and have a 401k, and they're 80 years old right now, they might be worth $10 million. So I think about that perspective is you can do very small things and you should be able to be like very successful and, deserve to be very wealthy at the end of the day. But I definitely want to, invest in startups. I've always, wanted to pour into entrepreneurs. I want to be able to help bring great innovative ideas to life and, just kind of be a forever founder is a good way to put it. In a serial entrepreneur, right? You consistently build and create, and just I try to start something new every year, every 2 years, right?
Wow.
I think that the acquisitions is a more scalable way to do that. You can be just building and buying businesses at scale over time, but forever founder and serial entrepreneur.
Dude, I am so excited for you. You're just getting started, man. Final question is, any last words of encouragement or calls to action for the audience before we sign off?
You got it. You got this. That's it. You got this, and you just have to, tell yourself that. And, it's like a muscle that you build. Chris, you talk about the sales muscle, which is like maybe the muscle is you religiously hit 50 phone calls per day outbound. Whatever that is, you build those muscles at a time. I would say you got this, and just tell yourself that, and tell yourself that, I think part of it's, again, going back to the athlete in me, where it's like, how many free throws in basketball have I shot in my entire life, right? Like, you have to believe you're going to make the shot. And if you can't even convince yourself in your own mind that that's going to happen, you've put yourself at risk for not, converting. So tell yourself you got this, and like, believe it enough times. I lived in Miami, so they lived by the phrase "fake it till you make it," which kind of became a joke, but to some regards, that can be true as well. Like, you really have to believe in yourself, right? So just tell yourself you got this. That's it.
Let's go. That is the theme lately. I swear, man, I was at church and the pastor talked about expecting greatness to come. And guys, take home message. You've got this. Believe that you're capable of success, you're worthy of it, and take action, and use some good time management like Chandler clearly does. Yeah. So Chandler, this has been an amazing conversation. I am grateful for your friendship and just the example you set for me and everyone to follow your dreams, work hard, and just be a good human along the way. So to the audience, to your success in tech sales and in life, happy selling and happy living, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Chandler.